Hi, everyone, and welcome to Brian's Horror Corner. I'm your host, Brian, and welcome to my classic Twilight Zone series review, Season 1. As you could probably hear in the background, I've got the Twilight Zone theme on for this video. So, yeah, we're going to be taking a look at Season 1 of this fantastic anthology series, television series that aired from 1959 to 1964. We're going to take a look at season 1 today. I own all 156 episodes, all 5 seasons, on this lovely Blu-ray collection here that my lovely wife got me about a year ago, year and a half ago. So yeah, season 1. Let's just get into it. The way this is going to work is I'm going to go through what I consider to be the most overrated episode of the season and the most underrated episode of the season. And then I'm going to give you my bottom 3 or worst episodes of season 1, including a dishonorable mention, and my top 5 episodes from season 1, including an honorable mention. So let's just go ahead and get into this. First, I'll start out by saying, in general, I think season 1 is the best season of this whole series, the strongest season. There's 36 episodes in season 1, and if I were doing the season 1 Twilight Zone marathon, which I have before, I could easily put on 30 out of the 36 episodes. In fact, it's possible I could watch 32 or 33 out of the 36 episodes if I was in the right mood or the right mindset. So that goes to show you how strong of a season it is, in my opinion. 36 episodes and like 30 to 33 are range from being good to really good to great to all-time classics. So yeah, so let's just get into it, starting with what I consider the most overrated episode of the season. And right away, I'm probably going to take some flack for this. But I think the most overrated episode, and this is partly just because of all the love and talk, how much it's talked about, and that is episode 8, Time Enough at Last. This is the one with Burgess Meredith as a bank teller who basically just wants to read and do nothing else. And he gets his wish when he becomes the sole survivor of a nuclear holocaust with a twist. The twist is great. If I were doing a top 10 twists of Twilight Zone, this would probably be in my top 10. However, I think the overall episode, I have to say, it's a little bit overrated just for all the love that it gets. And again, I'm not saying it's a bad episode. It's a good episode, and I enjoy it, and I can certainly watch it along with those 30 to 33. But it's just, I don't think it's an all-time great episode. I think it's a very good episode with a great twist. And so I think people are a little bit misled there by the twist, making the whole episode great. I just don't think it is. And then my most underrated episode, an episode that I don't think gets talked about nearly enough, that I love, and that is episode 23 from season 1, entitled The World of Difference. This is about a businessman played by Howard Duff who finds himself in another life as an actor playing a character in a movie. And it really does a good job of involving the viewer, because by the end of this episode, you don't know exactly if this character, if some of this story was in his mind or if it was real, and what's part of it was real and what's part of it was in his mind. It just has a great balance, great pacing, a great performance by Howard Duff. I just love this episode. I can't believe it doesn't get more love or get talked about more than it is. Yeah, World of Difference. Check it out. That's episode 23 from season 1. And now we'll get into my bottom 3, starting with my dishonorable mention of my least favorite from season 1. And this might be a surprise. I don't know how people feel about this episode, but it's episode 31 towards the end of the season, entitled The Chaser. Um, Basically, this episode's about a love-struck man who's in love with a self-obsessed woman named Leela, and he ends up buying a love potion that works too well. That's the premise of the episode, and it's just kind of, it's not an awful episode, but it's just kind of boring to me. It really doesn't do much in terms of a Twilight Zone episode. It kind of feels like a filler episode that they threw in towards the end of the season. Like I said, not the worst of the worst, because it's just my dishonorable mention, not one of my bottom 3, but it's still forgettable enough for me that I have to bring it up. Just kind of a meh episode. Now we get into my bottom 3, and again, this is just my opinion. So if you love these episodes, I'm happy for you. Nothing against you or these episodes, but for me, these are the 3 that just didn't land for me at all. My number three would have to be early in the season, episode four, entitled "The 16 Millimeter Shrine." This is the one about the aging movie star who rewatches her old films in an attempt to recapture her youth. She kind of spends the episode in a state of depression, longing for the old days, and we actually get a good performance by Ida Lupino as well as Martin Balsam in this episode, so they're definitely not the problem. I just think it was sort of an ill-conceived and even less well-delivered story and episode. It just makes it kind of forgettable, and that's the 16 millimeter Shrine from season one. It's my number three bottom episode. Number two, I have to go with one that's probably most people's one of their least favorites anyway, and that's later in the season, I should say, episode 35, second to last, entitled "The Mighty Casey." And as somebody that's a sports fan, you might think it's surprising that I would have an episode about sport as one of my least favorites, but it's one of my least favorites for good reason. If you've seen The Mighty Casey, it's about a baseball manager who ends up taking his team to the championship thanks to a robot pitcher. Just that premise alone and reading that does make me roll my eyes. It's even worse when you watch the episode because, first of all, they use a lot of like special effects sounds for when this guy pitches, like just really cheesy, like circus cues, sound cues. I don't know. This whole episode is just a disaster. And then what we're left to believe at the end of it is that the moral of the tale is just awful. The Mighty Casey, if you want to know why it's so bad, just watch it. Um, just an awful episode, my number two, but nothing could top my least favorite episode of the season. And that is episode 13 from season one. The Four of Us Are Dying. I died a little watching this episode. That's how bad it was. This is about a small time con man with the ability to change his face for reasons unknown. He changes his face to assume identities of a musician, a gangster, and a boxer. Um, yeah, this episode is worthless. The pacing is off. It's bad. But the biggest reason this is number one is this episode actually made me mad at the end of it. It actually pissed me off with what happens like the last 5 minutes of the episode. This is one that I won't watch. I'll go out of my way to avoid this one if I'm watching a marathon. The Four of Us Are Dying is the worst episode of season one, in my opinion. Okay, on to bigger and better things now for season one. There's a lot of better things in season one. Starting with my honorable mention for season one of the Twilight Zone, and that's going to be episode five, entitled "Walking Distance." This aired on October 30th, 1959, and it's basically about an ad executive played by Gig Young. Under pressure at his job, he visits his old hometown only to find himself returned to his childhood. Um, this is a really good episode, really relevant, I think, for a lot of people. It definitely is for me. Sort of that whole idea of you can't go home again. You can't live in the past is the moral of the tale. You got to live in the here and now and look towards the future. Um, and this is a guy, a character that sort of longs for the past, and he kind of butts heads with his younger self in the past, and it just doesn't work, and it kind of goes against nature. And it just got a really good, well paced episode with good performances. Walking Distance is definitely worth checking out, and it just missed my top five episodes of season one of the Twilight Zone. Okay, now we get into the creme de la creme of season one, the absolute best episodes, in my opinion. Starting at number five, which is episode 18, written by Richard Matheson, airing on February 5th, 1960, and it's entitled "The Last Flight." This is about a British World War I fighter pilot who flies through a strange cloud and lands his plane on a modern day American air base. This is just a great episode, from the acting to the pacing to the idea of it to the time travel aspect of it to the whole idea of making amends and righting a wrong. Like I said, the performances are great, especially by I guess it's Kenneth Haya, who plays oh, I know, I forget the character's name. Shoot. But The Last Flight, anyway, regardless, The Last Flight is just a great, great season one episode. This is an episode that's actually, I like it more each time that I watch it. I mean, I liked it the first time that I watched it, but it just, I like it more each time. It's just a great, great episode. You got to check out The Last Flight from season one. That's number five. Number four is going to be one of the later episodes from season one entitled The After Hours. This is a Rod Serling written episode that aired on June 10th, 1960. This is about a woman played by Anne Francis who's told that the floor on that that a floor on a department store where she made a purchase does not exist. She's told that by everybody when she goes back to try to return an item, and it's got a great twist. It's a really creepy, more horror type of episode with great atmosphere, a great performance by Anne Francis. This is when I think of the Twilight Zone. This is one of those episodes that come to mind first, which really says a lot about this episode. I love the After Hours. That's definitely my number four favorite episode from season one. Moving on to number three, this is a really well known, well talked about favorite for most people. And that's episode 22 that aired on March 4th, 1960, entitled The Monsters Are Due on Maple Street. Um, a power failure causes the residents of a suburban neighborhood to suspect one another of being monsters from outer space who are planning an invasion. This episode has so much relevance no matter what time frame you watch it and what decade. It definitely has relevance today in 2021. It's all about paranoia and taking an idea or a thought and running with it basically to a really far extreme, a violent extreme. Um, yeah, the monsters are due on Maple Street. What can you say? This is the definition of the Twilight Zone, and I love the ending of this episode as well as Rod Serling's sort of moral wrap up of this episode because it's just so true and hits home so well. I just love the last 3 or 4 minutes of the episode, whatever it is, when they sort of pan away from the town and all hell's breaking loose to what we see, the twist that we get that I'm not going to give away. I don't know if I mentioned it, but I'm going to kind of stay away from giving too much away as I do all these reviews for the Twilight Zone. I'll have to give something away as I'm talking about my favorite and least favorite episodes, but I'm definitely not going to give the twists away, and I'm going to try not to give too much reveal away in individual episodes. Now we get into the top two episodes, which was very hard to go 2-1, 1-2. I love both of these episodes with a passion, but I decided that number two is going to be "And When the Sky Was Open." This is episode 11 from season one that aired on December 11th, 1959. This is about three astronauts that return from the desert where their spacecraft has crashed, but they cannot remember what happened during their flight. And that's about as much as I can say about this episode, but it has great pacing, a very good combination of sci-fi and horror. Rod Taylor, who plays the main character, is fantastic in this episode. I'm a big fan of Rod Taylor, actually, overall. He was in The Birds as well, the Hitchcock movie. Very good actor. Yeah, this is just a fantastic episode that I can really watch anytime. Um, Definitely one of my favorites of the entire series. But when it comes to number one for season one, for me, it has to be episode number 9, written by Charles Beaumont and aired on November 27th, 1959, and that's entitled Perchance to Dream. This is about a man with a severe heart condition who has been awake for a long time and tells the psychiatrist that he will die if he goes to sleep because of a vixen, a woman who's trying to kill him in his dreams. This episode's great, from the performance by Richard Conte, who plays the main character, to the female character, Suzanne Boyd, to the visuals. This is a very visual episode as we go to an amusement park as he's telling the story about his dream that he's having. And it has another great twist having to do with dreams at the end that really works. I'm sure it worked better for the time. This is an episode that was very much ahead of its time, but for me, I still enjoy it, even in 2021. You might say the twist doesn't work quite as well for a lot of people nowadays just because of everything we've had, both in movies and shows since the time of this episode, but I still really enjoy it, and it's definitely my favorite episode from season one, Perchance to Dream. Good old Edward Hall, that's the character played by Richard Conte. Very effective Twilight Zone episode, my favorite season one episode. So that's it, guys, for this review, for this video, season one of the Twilight Zone, talking about my favorite, least favorite episodes. Go ahead and comment down below what are your favorite episodes from season one of the original Twilight Zone series, your least favorite episodes from season one. Tell me what you also think is your most overrated and underrated episode from season one. Um, be sure to like this video and hit the little notification bell so you don't miss any of my upcoming Twilight Zone review videos. Also, subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any of the rest of this series, as well as other horror movie reviews and television show reviews that I'll be doing related to horror coming up throughout the next few months. Thank you for watching this video. Check out the Twilight Zone, the original one. It's awesome. And stay scared. Bye, everyone.